Story 1. The death of the older family and your rising name on that list. I was just ruminating earlier today with my situation. It feels like I was 20 just yesterday. But then suddenly I have an adult daughter, I've buried grandparents and a parent, and now more voices turn to me than I can turn to myself. Story 2. The incessant flow of bills. Phone, water, electricity, insurance, rent or mortgage. Also college debt. Oh, and dental care. Kurt Vonnegut had it right when he said the trouble with getting older is you outlive your teeth. Story 3. How much time you spend just doing stuff. Oh, I need to replace my tire and that's over by the store. So while I replace the tire, I can do some errands and I'll save time and be home in no time. 3 hours later. Okay. Just one more errand before I head home. Also, how putting off a small task just a couple of days in a row can quickly amount to a longer chore or responsibility later. I can just leave this in the sink, get to it later before bed. 2 days later. Why is this grime caked onto this plate still? I've been scrubbing for 10 minutes straight. Story 4. The endless cleaning. I had chores when I was a kid, but I had zero clue how much actual work went into keeping a house. I cleaned my house this morning, and by midweek it will be a war zone of pet hair, crumbs, and dust. I don't even have kids. It's like the underpants gnomes show up when I'm asleep and mess my house up. Story 5. Being sick and having to care for yourself is challenging. When you were younger, your parents would get the medicine, or the medicine cabinet would always be stocked. But here I am with a cold, having to build up the energy to go to the supermarket to buy some aspirin and throat lozenges all by myself. Story 6. Careers. As a kid, you hear, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's always nurse, doctor, fireman, game designer, and so on. It all seems so simple. But then, when you start training or working in that career and realize you don't like it, it feels terrifying to have to think of a new career identity. I'm pretty sure most of us spend a lot of time working through this question. What do I do if my career isn't viable? We often conclude that it actually makes more sense to work in a shop or any other job, go home at night after paying the bills and not stress. It's the realization that really takes time. Story 7. A lack of community. Growing up, you have your elementary school. Each day you see your friends and participate in activities together. Sometimes they move away and sometimes you do, but it largely stays the same through high school and middle school. Flash forward to adulthood, and you're just alone. You want to make friends in real life, but have no idea how to go about doing it without seeming creepy, desperate, or who knows what. This is really hard when you are not overtly religious, so you cannot join a religious community. My friend and I talk about this from time to time. It's arguably the hardest thing to deal with in life. It gets worse the longer you live, as you know you are outliving your generation. Story 8. Controlling your finances. Everything I have learned about budgeting, debt recovery, pensions, saving, and wise purchases I have had to learn for myself. Story 9. You can go days on end without having to speak to a single person. First, it's a dream come true. After about 2 months, you start talking to your toaster to fill the silence while waiting for your toast. Story 10. Making important life decisions. When you're young, you have a safety net, but when you're an adult, you're taking on risks that can influence successive years of your life. The same goes for being single versus having a family. Edit. Thank you for the silver. Story 11. Basic home maintenance. When to change air filters, smoke alarm batteries, timing of lawn care, how often you clean the gutters, are you supposed to clean under the stove, what is edging, how do you recycle, how to change locks, etc. Story 12. How much harder it is to make friends. I kind of feel like if you had not already made some good friends by 25 to 26, you will end up stuck with superficial friendships. Story 13. Being absolutely exhausted most of the time. I never thought I'd be the I hate everyone guy, but I am, and everyone can F*** off. Edit. Thank you for the love. Story 14. The existential horror of being in a dead-end job with a horrible boss but unable to afford to quit because you'll starve. Edit. Whoa. Just so you know, I'm better now. I left the job I didn't like, and I enjoy my work now. Also, as some of you suggested, I've been doing my master's concurrently. I'm working towards my dream job in a university. Story 15. That all those big things you thought you would have time to do when you are older often become physically impossible to do when you are older, even if you have the time. Story 16. Having to put up with so much nonsense from people in higher positions even though they are less competent than you, because you need that paycheck. As you get older, sometimes life circumstances trap you there. Story 17. How uneducated people are. The complete lack of reasoning and critical thinking is astonishing. You cannot even have a proper conversation with some people because they make up their minds and the conversation is over. Story 18. Being sued by the guy who crashed into me from behind. Wow, okay. Edit. My wife doesn't want a dash cam, but I'm going to get some eventually. It's great advice. We've had other accidents since, but that was the most consequential. However, the accident was in 1980, so not something I could have prepared for. So, story time? It was the night before Thanksgiving, and I was giving a friend a ride home from his gas station job. We were approaching their driveway. My former housemates had a rented house, a left turn, and there was a car coming toward us around the curve on an unlit two-lane country road just past that. So I stopped in front of the drive to let him go by. I saw his lights, but I couldn't tell how fast he was coming. Then I see high beams in the mirror for headlights coming fast. I try for the driveway because I still have a second. I pop the clutch and turn the wheel, but I'm driving a 1971 Volkswagen camper with a 45 horsepower engine. So it's not like I'm burning rubber. Meanwhile, the guy behind me actually tried to pass, going at least 60 to 70 in a 55, saw the oncoming car and tried to pass me on the right, but there was a guardrail right there because of a culvert or something, and he tried to wedge his car between us. So I get my van to about a 45-degree angle, and he catches my right rear corner. I wind up rolling into the ditch on the other side of the road and flipping into it, landing head up, facing the direction we came from. They took us to the nearby hospital to check us, and a cop gave me a ticket for not signaling a left turn. I told him I signaled, but I didn't see how I could prove it, so I didn't fight the ticket later. The hospital let us go, and I'm still kicking myself for not demanding he get tested for alcohol. A month or so after paying the ticket, I find out he's suing me for $100,000 for injuries. Not fighting a moving violation, it's New York State, lets him claim it was my fault. Should have gone to a lawyer, but I was good and broke at the time. See above, not prepared. My insurance company got a lawyer, but I didn't get that he was working for them, not me. At the deposition a year later, he barely remembered what happened in the accident and couldn't prove pain and suffering, but they didn't even try to shoot down his claims. Finally, before the trial date 2 years later, they settled for $5,000. My policy said they could only penalize me a little bit if they had to pay out less than $50,000. So it was minimal except that I only had liability, so I was out the cost of an old van. I should have sued him, but I was young and inexperienced and just wanted to move on. In fact, a friend had an almost identical 1971 camper and was selling it right then, so I bought that. The actual conclusion: 5 months after the settlement, he ran off the road and died. So I regret two main things: giving the oncoming car too much time and not getting a lawyer to fight the ticket and go after him for the cost. By the way, the guy was a local business owner and his store was right next to the station of the trooper that gave me the ticket. Story 19. If you don't love yourself as a teenager, you're going to have a tough time trying to learn it as an adult while supporting yourself. I wish I had tried harder as a teenager to understand myself instead of drowning my emotions in World of Warcraft. Story 20. Always having to be on. At work, you need to meet goals and be on. At home with your kids, you need to be on. With your spouse, you need to be on. I'm very fortunate that my wife and I can just sit and relax in complete silence for hours. And nobody is internally freaking out. Story 21. The number of decisions I have to make. As a kid, you never have a lot of choice in what's for dinner, what to do on the weekend, where you live, your household income, what to do when your vehicle makes a funny noise, and so on. Now that I have to look after all those things, I just wish someone would come along and tell me what to do half the time. Story 22. The adult problems that you cannot be prepared for. Committing your sister to a mental hospital. Choosing to respect your mother's do not resuscitate order when she stops breathing in the recliner watching The Price is Right. Leaving your sibling in the homeless situation they've chosen because you've run out of options to try and help them and are now just hurting yourself. becoming the financial anchor of your family because your father has been convicted of federal charges and is going to be in prison for 20 years. Life is real and it will find you. No matter who you are, your parents get old, people get sick. You end up becoming the decider of things no human should be burdened with. Story 23. Fearing getting sick and not having enough sick days, causing me to lose my job and the insurance that would have helped me get better from being sick. And related, wondering why I lose so much of my paycheck to health insurance, but then having to pay out of pocket and never reaching the maximum where my insurance actually pays anything. Story 24. Are the kids okay? Their grades, job, mental health? Can we pay that bill this month? Is the dog getting sick? Is that a lump I should worry about? Is mom recovering from her fall? Did I remember to send flowers for the mother-in-law's birthday? Never ends. Story 25. I'm not sure when I will start feeling like an adult. I'm 40, married, and own a house, but I don't feel like an adult. Maybe there is a checklist or a guidebook I can read or something. Story 26. Stupid people are everywhere. As kids, we are taught in everything books, movies, cartoons, that it's good versus evil. Almost every story, small or large, depicts good people and bad people. As you get older, you learn there are gray areas to that, shades of good and bad. One thing I've learned in the last 10 years or so is how many stupid people are out there, and that some of what could be seen as evil or bad isn't someone being a villain. They might just be really dumb. You know that saying, there's always one in a crowd. I'm starting to see that it's more like, there's always about a third in a crowd. Story 27. Normal housing is becoming a luxury and designed for two people to split the bills. How is this normal? People used to live in households where the wife didn't work and raised 3 kids on a single income. I make $50,000 a year and can't afford to live on my own. Story 28. I spent my whole high school and university years doing my bare minimum to have a good curriculum and then discovered that my poor time habits wouldn't work in adulthood. Story 29. I have posted this before, but I was not prepared for making the sensible right decision my whole life and still have everything fall apart. I lost my job, my husband left, I became a single parent, had major surgery, entered a pandemic, and had all 3 of my kids develop significant mental health issues. Story 30. The isolation of being a single dad. Single parents don't have a fallback, someone to carry the load for a few minutes while you decompress and jump back into the fray. When you're on your own, there is no break. When you're not at work, you're at home. There is no going out, getting away, dating, or adult time. I'm in a rural area and don't have family or a sitter for my boys, so it's all on me. Story 31. Being seriously sick and having to care for and comfort yourself. I'm currently huddled under 4 blankets fighting hot flashes and cramps from food poisoning and chills plus aches after a COVID-19 shot. All I really want is my mama to give me hot tea, turn on Rocco's Modern Life, and pat my back until I pass out and sleep through it. The problem is I am a mother in my mid-30s, and my mother is a nearly 70-year-old little old granny who lives 2 states away. I miss my mom, guys. Story 32. Spending hours on the phone arguing with insurance companies, cell phone companies, telecom companies, and student loan companies when they mischarge you. Story 33. The fact is, it's all a facade. Adults aren't really more mature than most teenagers or people in their early 20s. They just have more responsibilities to tend to and can't indulge in all the foolish things they used to. Sure, some grow out of hobbies or interests, but for every person who acts very mature, I know people who are basically responsible 15-year-olds. My dad sure was one. Some folks seem to have had a nerve struck by this, and it is by no means meant to be insulting. We all have different personalities. Sure, you might grow and change as you get older, but let's not pretend that there aren't adults out there who still love children's shows, comic books, playing with toys with their children, or who never grew up. Inversely, there were kids who worked 2 jobs, went to school, and raised their brothers and sisters. I'm simply stating that I think the difference in maturity you are expecting to see as you grow up is a falsehood people profess because no one really knows how to explain adulthood, growing up, and sacrificing time and interests for survivability or necessity. Story 34. Having to be the one to plan one of your parents' funerals. My mom passed unexpectedly when she was 45. Not a responsibility I ever expected to have when I was 25. Story 35. The ever-looming but quiet desperation. The everyday struggles of addiction and their very real consequences. The holes left in your heart when those you hold dear are gone. The onerous weight of life itself. Story 36. When you are a kid, you do not wear out clothes because in 6 months you have outgrown them. That slows down by the end of high school, and there is this weird transitory period where you slowly discover that you have worn out that really comfortable pair of jeans and have to replace them, and no, holding on for a little longer just is not an option.